Okay, this is part 14. Your amazing destiny. Your destiny, not hard to understand. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim McCotter. Welcome. Now, in Romans 10 5 through 8, it says this quote, Moses writes this about the righteousness that is by the law. The person who does these things will live by them. But the righteousness that is by faith says, Do not say in your heart, Who will ascend into heaven? That is to bring Christ down, or who will descend into the deep? That is to bring Christ up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you, it is in your mouth and in your heart. That is the message concerning faith that we proclaim. End quote. These verses declare there are two ways to be righteous. First, the righteousness that is by the law. End quote. In other words, keeping the law perfectly. But the apostle James said in James 2:10, quote, For the person who keeps all of the law except one is as guilty as a person who has broken all of God's law, end quote. So it's not likely that you or I or anyone else is going to make God's perfect standard of righteousness by never having broken any of God's law. So, number two, quote, the righteousness that is by faith, end quote. Having faith in God's Son to have kept the law perfectly and to have paid our debt for us on the cross is the righteousness that's by faith. This way of righteousness is by faith. That is your faith. It can't be someone else's faith. It can't be your parents' faith. And it's certainly not God having faith in you, but rather you having faith in God's Son dying for you. On the surface, it may be a little hard to understand what Paul is trying to say here, quoting the Old Testament, but it's really, quote, not too difficult for you to understand, end quote, when you know where Paul is quoting from in the Old Testament, which was their only Bible at that time. It was Deuteronomy 30, verse 11 through 14, quote, This command I am giving you today is not too difficult for you to understand, and it is not beyond your reach. It is not kept in heaven so distant that you must ask, Who will go up to heaven and bring it down so we can hear it and obey? It is not kept beyond the sea so far away that you must ask, Who will cross the sea to bring it to us so we can hear it and obey? No, the message is very close at hand. It is on your lips and in your heart so that you can obey it, end quote. Paul is saying no one has any excuse. Salvation is not out of anyone's reach. For sure, it has nothing to do with God keeping it from you for any reason, and certainly not because, quote, you were not predestined, end quote. He wrote that, quote, it is not too difficult for you to understand, end quote. He said that it, quote, is not beyond your reach, exclamation point, end quote. Looking at the Old Testament quote, along with how Paul is using it here in Romans, Paul is saying you don't have to go to heaven to get Christ and bring him down to you or some mysterious deep place to reach him. He's available to everyone right here and now. So what does God say? Quote, The word is near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart. That is the message concerning faith that we proclaim, end quote. Here, the Apostle Paul is directly contradicting the Calvinist philosophy that God is picking, quote, winners and losers, end quote. No, God is saying here, it is now no longer up to me. I've done all I can do to save you. I sent my only son to die for you. But now it's up to you. Romans 10, 9 and 10 says, quote, If you confess with your mouth Jesus as Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved, end quote. Think about what God says in all the above verses. First, it's not too difficult for you to understand. Second, it is in your mouth. Third, it's in your heart. Fourth, if you confess. 5, if you believe. 6, it is not beyond your reach. And 7, this is the message concerning faith that we proclaim. God is not electing for anyone to not be saved. He has put it in everyone's mouth and heart so they can confess and believe. Or they can reject him. Now it is left only up to each individual, if they will, confess and believe. The verses that will follow will confirm this even more. We'll look at them and much more next time.